Hey, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are today. So excited to have you for another segment of Leading in the Moment with Geronda. And if you've seen the description of our event or topic today, I'm going to go into it in just a moment, but it's to talk about really the state of DEI and what we're seeing happen across many different industries and just across the DEI sector for many practitioners and just anyone who really works on DEI is passionate about it and does the work and how it's really impacting companies. But welcome. Thank you for being here. If you're live, I would love for you to put live in the chat if you're joining live today. And as many of you know, if this is not your first time and you're coming back for another segment, I like to ask a question of the day before I move forward into the topic. And so the question that I would like to ask all of you today is what brought you joy today? Now, this question I have to give a shout out and credit to Rakita. Rakita is a fantastic person. Rakita is somebody that I've been connected with through a speaking coaching program that I'm a part of, Speaking for Profit, which is just an awesome and incredible organization. And follow Rakita Franklin on LinkedIn if you have the chance. She does these wonderful, amazing, authentic conversations and has these beautifully made cards that come from her company, the Social Experience, to have really more meaningful conversations with one another. So, giving a shout out to Rakita for this question, which is what brought you joy today. And for me, what brought me joy is a lot of things lately have been bringing me joy. But today I felt really joyful that my wife got to spend time outside. She loves to be outside. She got to spend time in our front yard, hanging out, irregardless of the work that was being done on our trees along our roads. There was a lot of trucks taking down trees and things. But I just I love when she's happy, and she was really just in a good zen place, and I was in a really great zen place, and so it was just a good day. It's a really good day, and I loved it, and the sun is out. We are coming off of a couple weeks of a snowstorm, so the sun's out, and it's just beautiful weather. It's been fantastic weather, so being able to do that has been awesome too. So that's what brought me joy today. And again, if you are joining me live, would love for you to put live in the chat so I know that you're here. And here's a question of the day. I'd love to get your answer, whether it's in the chat as well, just to see how you're all doing. All right. Now, to get to the meatiness of the topic, now we're going to be talking about unleashing business potential by preserving DEI programs. Now, I was saying in the beginning that there's a lot of impact, negative impact that's been happening across many different DEI verticals and industries where companies are now deciding to get rid of DEI programs because of legislation that's been putting out there. There's a fear of an impact that's going to be happening because in higher education, there's a lot of limitations now for the DEI programs, as I mentioned in my last segment. But it's causing a huge detriment to a lot of organizations that I think people are not realizing because a lot of what is being put out in the media is false information. It's it's really blown up to be a bigger issue than it really is. Now, I'm not gonna ignore the fact that this has become a big impact for a lot of higher education institutions. But to take away diversity and inclusion departments or lay off or fire or let go DEI practitioners is not okay. It's causing a huge rift in our industries, in the practice and the work that we do. And so I say to companies that you can preserve your DEI programs and your DEI people, even if you feel like there's going to be all these limitations that might be put on corporate that you're seeing put on higher education. And there's ways to do this, but I want to take a step back for a second, really. And I want to think about how DEI even started in the first place. It's really important to go back to the factual history of why DEI started. And one reason, really thinking about it, is women and people of color have always been systematically excluded. And when we go back, it was actually legal to ban women and people of color from being in leadership roles or being promoted into leadership roles or even having really successful opportunities for them to be able to take care of themselves, their families, people they love. And so there's been a lot of that scrutiny back in history. And jobs were only really thinking about, well, it's not really about qualifications. It was more of based on the color of your skin, that's going to determine how successful you're going to be in whatever industry that you were going to be in. It's also then, there was a move to a new reality with things like, um, race and gender discrimination. It became illegal finally. So affirmative action really gave a way for companies to start thinking about not so much setting quotas to say we want to have two black people, you know, in this role, or we're only going to hire black people, but it was to give more of a opportunity for these companies to expand who they bring in and offer more opportunities for women and people of color. And then 1978, there was a ruling that took place that you can consider race as a factor, but again, not going into the quota. So, not hiring somebody simply because they're black, but really looking at holistically the qualifications and giving women and people of color at least a chance to be in the organization. So, there's a lot of history around DEI, and we were starting to look at how much of a disadvantage we were providing for women and people of color. Now, this was an incredibly short synopsis of the history. There's a lot more to the history, of course, that you can learn about, but the for the purposes of this conversation, we have to look at the job opportunity and just opportunity in general that has been limited and that's now presented to people of color. Now, stay with me, everyone. If you're here with me live, please put live in the comments. If you're watching the replay, you can also put replay in the comments as well. But now, going back again to this topic of really preserving your DEI programs and your people and your topics, we then move into some obstacles that, of course, people of color and women face when it comes to the workplace. Things like hiring discrimination or wage inequalities and hostile cultures. These are things that are still happening today. Not having opportunities that are equitable, meeting people where they are. And it's not just focusing on race any longer, or just gender. We've expanded out to support people with disabilities, people from different class systems, those that are LGBTQ. We've expanded to more different marginalized groups. And it's really showcasing the barriers that still happen in organizations and why DEI is needed more than ever. Because when you think about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, there's so many benefits to an organization. And maybe people may not see this because maybe the organization hasn't really formed a full commitment of this. So when the media is talking about these things, they're saying, "Oh yes, this makes perfect sense. There's no return on investment. There's detriments that are happening here." But before going into these clear benefits, I want to give some examples that I thought this company called The Conversation. They write a lot of different topics on things just like DEI. And they had this article about the backlash against DEI that's been happening, but the myths obscure the value of DEI. There's so many myths that are put out there. And one of the things that I think is really important to focus on is thinking about the situation that happened with Alaska Airlines when the panel detached in the air. How horrifying that was. But opponents without any evidence claim that DEI was the reason that this happened. Again, there was no evidence. But when people in larger positions of power say something, it's believed often in different ways. Another one was the cargo ship that unfortunately took down Baltimore's Key Bridge. That was something that was recent as well. And critics suggest that DEI was somehow at fault with this, that DEI was the reason why this happened. Again, no factual evidence, but they say this, and people of power say this, and more well-known companies with people of power say this. It must be believed. But there's so many myths because, again, no evidence. But when you think about the clear benefits to organizations, what a lot of people miss is that consumer needs are so diverse that you have to not only have representation that can support these consumer needs, but you also that representation can help to bring more light into how you can build things or products or services that really fits the needs of these different consumers, which not only broadens your scope of consumers, but increases your revenue, your finances, and really fits in within the market changes. It's also employee satisfaction. I think 95% of the time, and now I'm not a recruiter, but I've worked with recruiters, I've heard from recruiters, so many candidates to this day will not take a job if there's no commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, your company might say there's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but when they get into the company, and if there's not much representation, or they feel like they're still being uh, having disadvantages because of the systems, they are going to leave your company, and your satisfaction is going to go down. A lot of companies will do things like engagement surveys, and the questions might be DEI related. Do you feel like you're part of a team? Do you feel accepted? Do you feel like you can bring some parts of your full self to work? If the answer is no, not only is that going to impact your organization internally, but people leave and then they talk to their network and their group, and it's going to impact your organization in that way. There's also long-term financial success that comes with diverse teams and diverse leadership and diverse groups. There is so much research out there that shows the financial benefits of DEI. Now, again, that's not to say you just hire people who are diverse so that you can get more financial benefits from it. It is what comes with building diverse teams, inclusive leaders, doing these different DEI practices that brings all of this together. So there's so much benefit to it, and there's so much research for it. That's why it's so important to get your facts right when it comes to this type of research, what you're hearing out there. Double check your information. Speak to DEI practitioners, those that are actual experts who can tell you really what's going on in the industry. Now, we have the benefits, we know the obstacles, we have the history of it. But what's also really important and helpful is to know what actually works to move DEI forward so that there is a commitment and so that we can debunk this myth that there's no real value. And that's a couple of things. So before I go into that, again, if you are with me, put live in the chat. You can also put replay if you are watching the replay as well. But one thing is that really works is metrics. Now, think about this. When you are in a company, in an organization, you have metrics to show what your revenue is. You have metrics to show the amount of DEI practitioners, I'm sorry, not DEI practitioners, the amount of data that you have available to you, whether it's turnover percentages, recruiting percentages, your market value, the product engagement. There's a lot of metrics that companies already have access to, but people metrics are something that can be detrimental or something that is missing for a lot of organizations. Now, this could be something as simple as how many people are in leadership, broken down by gender and uh, and race. Maybe you want to go a little bit further and you want to say, okay, based on teams, who is in leadership by team, by gender and race. And that can give you a lot of information just to see what is your representation. Then you can go a little bit deeper. And if you do performance reviews or if you look at recruiting, you can see, well, how many people are in the pipeline and why are we not diversifying our pipeline when we know all these wonderful benefits of DEI? Now, there's also things like mentorship programs. Mentorship programs can be open to anybody. I know that a lot of times when we talk about whitewashing, or there's a lot of white men in leadership or a lot of white men in this industry, it is not to say that there's anything wrong or bad with white men or white people. It is just to say we have to broaden our ability to provide opportunities for everyone to be successful. And that will automatically include people of color, people in the LGBTQ plus community, people that are neurodivergent, that have things like ADHD, autism, anxiety, people who have, you know, English is not their first language. By offering this program to everyone and providing equitable opportunities, you're already expanding it out to include people of different races. Also, cross training different workers. Start looking at, when you cross train and you have people with different skill sets and a diverse array of demographics with those skill sets. Again, it goes back to things like employee satisfaction, your customer needs, expanding on your customer needs and your offerings. So it all is a trickle effect into one another. And you're doing this by cross training different people in the organization, regardless of their background. Again, you're including people of color, LGBTQ, people who are neurodivergent, people with disabilities, all of these different people automatically. It's also the flexible and family friendly workplace policies. So, a lot of companies are going hybrid now, for example. There are companies also that are fully remote, there are companies that are in person still. Now, by having flexibility, and especially in industries like law firms or healthcare, where flexibility can be a little bit challenging, there's ways to do it if you really listen closely to your workforce, especially if they are diverse. And if they are not, think about, well, what are we doing and why are they not diverse? Because we're not having a lot of this opportunity and advantage that we can have by bringing in more people like this, more diverse groups to increase our customer needs, the market changes that are coming. Now, I also want you to think about the myths of DEI and why you hear things like DEI is dead or DEI should die, or there's, DEI is just a brainwashing thing to say that all white people are bad people. Not at all the case. DEI is essentially ensuring that people have equitable opportunities. We are meeting them where they are. We are breaking down the systems so that there's equal opportunity for people of color and for, white people, but those that have been disadvantaged for, since the dawn of time, since the history when leadership opportunities was actually legal to ban people from having those opportunities. And we're going into a world now where DEI is top of mind and the forefront of so many different candidates, different generations. Gen Z, now I will put out there, I'm a proud millennial. I know some millennials have made us look bad, but I'm a proud millennial. And my generation and the generations after me care significantly about this, to the point where they're incredibly vocal. They will not work for an organization that is not committed to it or has it available. And they will make sure that those in the organization, not only themselves are heard, but others are heard, especially leadership make sure that they hear people. And some people might say that, well, when you think of DEI though, we do focus a lot on race, we do focus a lot on gender. We don't really think about how things are like, me as a white person, for example, not myself, but as an example, somebody as a white person might say, well, me as a white person, I have a disability that people don't know about. I'm disadvantaged. Why are we always talking about Black people and their disadvantages? Now, yes, good question. We talk about Black people and disadvantages because the visible skin tone that we hold and represent, that is something that puts us at a disadvantage already. Now, it does also put people with visible disabilities potentially at a disadvantage too. And we have to focus on those things. But when thinking about the benefits of DEI, it's not going to go away. People are going to come to an organization and look for how they're going to be a culture add to that organization. How are they going to be able to be somewhat of themselves in a place that takes up a majority of their day and a majority of their lifetime? People no longer want to be miserable, mistreated, disrespected. And the way to do that is to have these types of commitments towards diversity, towards equity, and towards inclusion. So it's these things like mentorship programs, cross training, workplace policies like family benefits or flexibility. These are benefits that will benefit your organization more than just something like mandatory DEI training, because these are tangible things. I realize I left this up here. These are things that you can actually measure the effectiveness of. You can measure the effectiveness of a mentorship program by seeing what at the end of it, you can collect feedback from the mentees, you can collect feedback from the mentors, you can see what has happened or changed for this individual being mentored. Being cross-trained, are people working on different types of projects? Is it increasing their performance? Is it increasing their confidence to be able to go out and share how this could impact the organization or even other communities, right? So having this information will then go back to support market changes, to support customer needs, to support employee satisfaction, and all these different things. So I say to you again, DEI is not going away. And if you have completely laid off, taken away, fired your DEI team, your DEI person, I say really, really reflect on if that was the right approach. Because I personally do not think it is. Now, even if you're in higher education and you feel like you can't talk about diversity programs or you can't, the way you talk about things has to change and has to be different, that doesn't mean you get rid of your DEI people. It just means you shift things a little bit so that you're able to still focus on these things. Maybe you don't say that you're looking for diverse candidates. Look at the qualifications. I'm looking for a qualified person, and you expand it out to everyone with the understanding that you do want to have some representation in your pipeline. There's ways to do this work. There's ways to go against what's happening out there. And I'm not going to get political. I'm not going to go into any of that. And I know it's something that is political, but there DEI is so valuable and important to your organization, and I really, really recommend and encourage you to look at the research on the benefits. I shared some today, but when you look at all of those, you will start to recognize that it is not going away. It is incredibly valuable to your organization. And just because you're hearing a lot of rhetoric out there, it's not factual. Go off of the facts from the researchers, talk to DEI practitioners, look into your organization and talk to your employees. How are they feeling about all of this? Because it's really not going away. It's not going away. So, again, the topic, unleashing business potential by preserving DEI programs. This title was something that I borrowed and tweaked a bit based on a bunch of that is research that is around in the past couple of months while all this is happening. That's like, we're not going away. This is not going away. It's too valuable to go away. So, thank you, everyone, so much. I can talk about this all day. But if you do have questions for me, please feel free to reach out to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go on my YouTube channel. My website should be there. But if you want to just email me, it's GWOLL spill, so SPILL 23 at gmail.com. And the next segment is going to be May 1st, which I can't believe we're already almost in May. My goodness. May 1st, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with a new topic that we're going to be talking about. I hope that you found this helpful and valuable. I hope that it puts you at ease and really reflect on, if you are not in DEI, how can you also influence leadership and others in your organization? How valuable DEI is so that we can keep the value going and stop going after information that is false information. Always go off of the facts. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. And until next time, I hope you have a great evening, a great day, a great weekend, and I hope a lot of things bring you joy during this time. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Bye now.